All right, I'm back. I'm going to try and upload this today. I've been suspended for a week. If I'm still suspended, then I'll put it up tomorrow. So whenever I'm back, this will be up. I did get a strike that I appealed and had rejected last week. It was over Wu flu jab misinformation from just about a year ago. I think it was dated like September 21st, 2021. And apparently you can get a strike for retroactive misinformation. So things that were considered correct by the establishment and by the news way back in September 2021, which is no longer considered accurate now, got me suspended. But, hey, it's not too bad because I was out of town for the rest of the week anyway. I missed one day that I could have uploaded something else, but, I'm back now. I should be out of my suspension period, and I wouldn't have been able to upload for most of that anyway. So if there was ever a time for me to get suspended, last week was as good as any week. So, with that said, so much has happened since I've been gone. It was one of the best weeks for news in this channel's history, and I was not here for it. So that kind of sucks, but I don't even know where to start. I mean, Europe is collapsing. The U.S. is not too far behind them. We are a total police state. You have dissident voices being just disappeared by the FBI. You have entrapped, Whitmer kidnapping plot victims, I don't even know what to call them at this point other than that, who have been convicted by a kangaroo court, a judge who told the jury to essentially disregard the law and ignore the idea of entrapment. And then we have the total confirmation of the Ashley Biden diary, which I think I've mentioned before but not talked about much. Because again, we didn't really know until now if it was true, and it looks like they're going to try and use the Ashley Biden diary as a means of locking up what's his name from the guy who exposed Acorn. God, I know I'm dating myself by thinking of him that way. James O'Keefe, Project Veritas. They're going to try and shut down Veritas, throw James O'Keefe in prison, Julian Assange style, because apparently he had possession of the Ashley Biden diary, which has been implicitly confirmed as authentic by the FBI. So all of this crap happened. The Whitmer, two of the Whitmer defendants get convicted by a kangaroo court. They prosecute and force a guilty plea from the woman who found accidentally Ashley Biden's diary, setting up a prosecution about James O'Keefe, and they swoop in and disappear Gavin McInnes in the middle of his show. They just break into his house and say, "You're out of here, buddy," and he's never been heard from since. Kind of like what happened to Gonzalo Lira at the start of the Ukraine war when the SBU broke in and just took him out and said, hey, we need to ask you some questions, Gonzo, and he disappeared for a number of weeks, I think, before being let out and having all of his social media accounts seized. So I guess that if that's all that happens to Gavin, that would be sort of a best case scenario. Europe, meanwhile, their electricity prices, I think last time I checked, in some of the countries in Europe, electricity prices are 10 times what they are where I live. Roughly speaking, I think I saw like 700 euros in that range in a lot of European countries per megawatt hour, that is. So I don't know how much electricity the average European household uses, but whatever they use, if it costs 10 times or more, what I'm used to people around me paying, and I know in Florida I believe our electricity prices are considered to be quite high compared to the rest of America. And ours probably will go up. I mean, certainly for the same reasons that European prices are going up. 75% of the electricity in my state is generated by burning natural gas. Natural gas, which is in extremely high demand. The only thing that has shielded us here in America from the same energy price spikes that they have in Europe has been the inability of Europe to import more liquefied natural gas. Importing liquefied natural gas into Europe is not an easy feat. It has to be transported over on boats, and then they need these terminals where the liquefied natural gas can be, I guess, regasified and pumped into the the European pipeline network. And that serves as a bottleneck, on the industry. It's not like there's just a pipeline running under the Atlantic into Europe. These ships can only carry so much gas, and even if they built more ships, as I've discussed in the past, these terminals only have a capacity for taking in, a finite amount of LNG and pumping it into the European system, at any one point, and those terminals are maxed out. So that means that we here in America should theoretically be able to keep a lot of this gas that the Europeans otherwise would be buying up because of their refusal to buy gas from Russia. Nevertheless, an extreme economic depression in Europe will spill over here to North America. I just don't know how quickly and how intense it will be. I do think that it will be less intense here than in a place like Germany. I think that there is no hope for Europe for the foreseeable future, because at this point, I don't think that the Russians, even if the Europeans went to them, on their hands and knees and begged them to return to the status quo, I think that the Russians at this point have the euro pores right where they want them. So the end result is that Europe will have to hit rock bottom before things get better. The EU will have to dissolve. Countries like Hungary and Poland will need to separate themselves from the EU. In the case of Hungary, they will need to separate so that they can continue to cooperate with Russia on securing their energy needs. Apparently, Hungary just signed a deal to have the Russians build, I think, 2 more nuclear power plants in Hungary. The Europors will not be very happy about that. In fact, they're pushing a complete ban on all Russian travelers in Europe. They want to deny them, Schengen visas. This will be bad for countries not only that rely heavily on Russian tourism, like Cyprus or Portugal or Greece, but also on countries that just want to do business with Russia, like Hungary. Hungary understands that it is a landlocked country, and that importing things from the sea, like fuel, is not the best option for them, because they would have to go through a country like Germany first as an intermediary, because Hungary does not have any of its own ports. So Hungary would much rather have a pipeline running into its country that serves its energy needs, as well as building its own domestic nuclear power plants. Now, in the case of Poland, Poland is as, I think at this point, deranged in its anti-Russia stance as Germany. Although, Poland, they have their reasons historically for not liking the Russians, but again, they're sawing off their own foot. Poland, however, does have more of an ability to thumb their nose at the Russians than other European countries, because Poland has, I believe, some of the largest coal reserves in all of Europe. Poland could be energy independent based on coal if it were not for European environmental regulations. Europe doesn't like coal. They think coal is very dirty and bad. They do not want countries building new coal-fired power plants and doing whatever else with coal. I think you can actually even, if all you had was coal, I believe you can make natural gas and oil out of coal. There is coal liquefaction, coal gasification. I'm not sure how efficient those processes are, but nevertheless, coal is a very valuable resource that the Greens across the West view as kryptonite. And so I think for Poland to really tap into that resource, they're going to need to throw off the yoke of the European Union. And so with the total economic collapse of Europe, which is just on the horizon, which we're actually in the process of now, I think it's only a matter of time before the supreme values of the European Union become insufficient for holding the Union together. Britain has already left, although unfortunately Britain is not taking advantage of its new rights, under Brexit. It is being just as deranged, just as woke and green and anti-Russia as the rest of Europe. So the result there, unfortunately, is quite the same. And so they're not able to serve as an example for other European countries, that are considering Brexit, or something like Brexit, not literally Brexit, since they're not Britain. But if you had, Britain reopening its coal mines, continuing to import gas from Russia, doing all of these things, lowering energy prices and the price of goods rather than increasing energy prices by, 80% this month, leading to mass uprisings, people refusing to pay their energy bills, just everyone defaulting on their bills because it's ridiculous. They don't feel like they should have to pay it, and they shouldn't, because energy is abundant. It's the government who is, of these nations, who is not allowing these energy resources to flow and to be used by their domestic populations. And so the administration here in the United States has a similar policy, although it has not had as disastrous effects because our energy infrastructure is not quite as fragile as that of Europe's. But ultimately, here in America, if things are going to get better here, we're going to need to open up the oil wells and the coal mines and everything else. In fact, speaking of which, I believe there is a good documentary, I've not seen it yet, that came out in 2020. I guess it's well known within left-wing circles, but I don't operate so much in left-wing circles, so I hadn't heard about it till now. But it was called Planet of the Humans. It was produced by Michael Moore, although it was not a Michael Moore film. He was not the director, but I guess he was a proponent of these people. And it was a movie made by Greens, exposing the lies of green energy. And so I'm eager to watch that when I get the chance. I heard it got an endorsement from Max Blumenthal, who is one of the people on the left who I have the most trust in. So just thought I'd mention that, something in case, because I'm sure probably a lot of you haven't heard of the movie either, if I haven't. So it is called Planet of the Humans. I don't think I'll do a review when I watch it. I don't know, maybe I will if it's very impactful. But anyway, the green activists who made that film came to the conclusion that that green energy is alive for basically two reasons. One, it's not feasible. You can't replace fossil fuels with green energy. As I've talked about endlessly on this channel, these people figured out back in 2020, you just simply can't produce enough energy. The result will be that there's just going to be less energy. We are going to result in degrowth and ultimately a radical depopulation of the planet. Billions, if not hundreds of millions at the very least, will perish, will starve to death. That was apparently one of the first conclusions of the movie. And the second conclusion, as I've also talked about endlessly on this channel, these people figured out way before me, these Greens, green energy is not green. It is very bad for the environment, just in different ways. And, in my opinion, I think that it is worse. Because, as I've talked about in the past, these green forms of energy are not very recyclable. The only way in which you can, consider them green, quote unquote, in any sense, is that they have less CO2 emissions. But other than that, in every other way, they're terrible. They're burning. The solar panels reflect light and literally, what's the term? Incinerate birds. Sometimes, of course, endangered birds, protected birds. Then you have these giant windmills, which are very quickly filling up landfills because there's not a shelf life. There's a lifespan to these windmills. They only have a useful life of so many years, and when they're done, you can't really recycle them. They end up in a landfill. And they even talked about, the politics of lithium and how the government of Bolivia was overthrown in order for Western companies to secure a more reliable supply of lithium. So I think that there is an opportunity here for an alliance between the left and the right against these things. And I think the people on the right need to learn about the facts, especially now that the West is going into a completely forced and man-made economic depression. A depression caused mostly by a tremendous loss of the supply of energy. People on the right and the left, and especially people on the right, because people on the right would be the most open to these facts, need to learn about green energy and all of this nonsense, and stop being afraid to embrace fossil fuels and to support them, and stop pandering to these people. Stop accepting the premises of these things that they say about how, well, we got to reduce the fossil fuels because they're dirty. And the planet's going to go haywire if we keep putting carbon in the atmosphere. The same people modeling how the climate is going to change are the same people who modeled the initial death rates of the Wu flu, who told us that, if we didn't lock down immediately, hundreds of millions of people were going to die in a matter of weeks. What was it? The Imperial College of London, I believe. I think that was the school. They came out with that Wu flu model. They also, have produced some of the most widely cited, climate models talking about climate chaos. What the leaders in Europe are doing and what the leaders in America are trying to do is very clear. Their policies will result directly in the depopulation of their countries and, frankly, of the rest of the world, because countries like the United States, as well as mainland Europe, they export a lot of food. And if our economies shut down, essentially, because that is what will happen if we have less energy, we're going to produce less things. If fertilizer is considered a bad thing now, we will have lower crop yields. If we start filling up our fields with windmills and solar panels, you're going to be taking productive agricultural land out of production, because remember, they want open fields for these things. They don't want, a forest is not, does not make a good solar farm. You need somewhere flat that you can put these solar panels. And so that means they need fields. They need pastures. They need land that has been previously cleared and was producing food. So you'll have less land producing food, and the land that is producing food will be producing less food per acre. It'll be producing less efficiently because they won't be allowed to use chemical fertilizers. And so we'll be lucky to feed our own people in this country, let alone exporting food to the rest of the world. Cheap American corn will be a thing of the past. Food aid to war-torn regions of Africa, all that's gone. And the people in these poorer countries like Africa will end up like Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, the people are starving because they are not able to get fertilizer to grow enough food, and they don't produce a surplus of food in these poorer countries in Africa and Southeast Asia or South Asia. They produce barely enough as it is. They don't have an obesity problem. They have a starvation problem, a malnutrition problem. And then when you take away and reduce their ability to produce food, you're just going to kill people. And so I don't think it's hyperbolic, and I know coming right off of a suspension, I'm going guns blazing. I'm risking getting suspended again, and if so, I guess so be it. Rumble got a big boost from Andrew Tate recently. Not that my Rumble account does worse than here or BitChute. I've had no growth on Rumble. I think I have like 5 subscribers or something ridiculous. But hey, I still have BitChute. My BitChute is about the same as it is here. I don't have a big channel on YouTube to begin with, so it's not that big of a loss. But this is important. We're in the brink of a mass extinction event. I don't know what else to call it at this point. If the leaders of the EU and the United States, the European Union, the United States, these two political entities, if they get their way, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death. I mean, people in Poland are having to wait in line. You know how they had bread lines in the Soviet Union? Poland has coal lines. People are waiting in line to get a lump of coal from the government coal, so that they can heat their home to make it through the winter. Deutsche Bank is modeling as a part of their economic model. They're factoring in German citizens having to chop wood to heat their homes. These are not things that we're used to hearing about in modern so-called first world countries like Germany. And even though we in the United States, I think, are in the best position, we're much better off increasingly than Europe, just as a pure accident, matter of circumstance, not so much because of the quality of our leadership. Our, what few so-called dissident leaders we have in this country, I don't think on the energy question they don't know what time it is. I don't think that they are. Nobody's done enough of a deep dive on this. I think that a lot of our politicians have gotten a lot better on a lot of things. As have I, in the last few years. But the energy thing, I think people are still way behind the 8 ball. And the average voter, too. So, with that said, I guess I'll assign that as homework. I don't know when, because I don't know when I'm going to get to the movie. But at some point, watch that Planet of the Humans movie. I can't vouch for it 100%, but it sounded like it was, like it had a lot of interesting facts in it. It is going to be from a left-wing perspective. But again, those... The true environmentalists, there are some people who actually care. They're not all charlatans like Al Gore. And those people who actually care have the greatest incentive to know what the facts of all this are. And it's also more powerful coming from them because they have, intellectually they have an incentive to know the truth. From a public relations standpoint, they don't want to be pushing this idea that green energy is a sham, because that's bad politics for them. But, I guess if you actually care about something, you care more about the truth of the matter than how it's going to affect you politically. And so it sounds like a pretty powerful film. Bottom line, though, people need to wake up about this. This is the issue of our time, unquestionably. I mean, I would say, I think at this point, it's more important than the police state issue here, in the U.S. It's more important, yes, than I think even the FBI disappearing people from their homes in the middle of a live broadcast like Gavin McInnes. Because countries have gone through that and and their populations have been able to survive that. Yes, a lot of unlucky people have been whisked away and get killed, disappeared, never to be heard from again. But the population en masse is able to survive. Political assassinations and things like that, and disappearances, even in some of the worst countries, like down in Latin America during the Cold War, I think they were only, they were in the tens of thousands. They weren't in the hundreds of millions. Look at, as bad as things were in East Germany, if you kept your head down and didn't get yourself disappeared, you were able to at least survive. You didn't have a great surplus of food. You weren't able to get things like bananas very regularly, but you had enough bread to make it through the day. They were willing to use coal. In fact, East Germany used coal infamously to, such a great extent that, the snow and things would be covered in soot in the winter, and, they used brown coal in East Germany. And so even though they were doing a lot of terrible things, communism doesn't work well. They were not going out of their way to slaughter people like they were, let's say, in Mao's China, where the policy of Mao, it's not that Mao was trying to feed people and just had, made mistakes and ran things poorly because communism doesn't work well. Mao's explicit policy was to take people out of farming and put them into, heavy industry. And so when you do that by force, when all of the labor of the country is taken up currently just trying to produce enough food for people to survive, if you take people out of farming when your economy is in that state, the inevitable result is a famine that kills, estimates say, 100 million people. Oh, gee, where have we heard that number before? Yes, that's what we're talking about. The Great Reset should be compared, I think, directly to the Great Leap Forward. Except we're talking about bigger numbers of people here being affected. We're talking about the Great Leap Forward on a global scale. So I think I will leave you folks off with that very happy thought. With that said, I should, in theory, be back here tomorrow.